Greetings all. Welcome to Aquarian Diary. I'm your host, John Irving. It is July 2nd, 2024. Hi everyone. I hope everyone is doing fantastically. It's been a while since I've been on here, and there's a good explanation for that. This recent period, actually the last few months, since about the time we've had the eclipses back around April, has been an incredibly powerful and potent period for my own personal evolution and transformation. I have had periods in my life before where I went through times where I had a lot of very powerful and meaningful spiritual experiences. And this recent period has been on par with them and perhaps even exceeding them in some ways. These haven't happened very often for me. There's often years in between. But I can say with absolute sincerity and clarity that this time that we're in right now is really remarkable. So I hope people are doing their spiritual work and their shadow work and their spiritual practice, because it's been nothing short of jaw-dropping in many cases. I'm not going to be describing what I've been experiencing in a lot of personal detail. Mostly that's because I don't like to share things broadly or publicly that are in process, because I feel it's important to kind of hold those things close to my chest until I go through them. And then when I have some kind of resolution or I can put a bow on it, I'm then ready to talk about it. But I haven't completely integrated all of these remarkable experiences I've had lately. And I don't think other people should do that either. I could easily come on here and talk about all these things that are happening every day, but I would just be chattering. I like to have clarity and understanding about my experiences and my revelations before I discuss them. Otherwise, it's just kind of noise. And we all know that we don't need more noise in the world right now, do we? So when this settles in for me, and I do feel like I've gone through a paradigm shift, which, like I said, I'm still processing, it feels like my whole life is going to be different. And it already is in many ways. It's just that I don't have a lot of perspective on it because I'm still in it. So I hope that's been true for you too. I did do some episodes a few weeks ago talking about, that this was a time for miracles. And that is absolutely true. There have been some things that are happening and unfolding in my life that definitely qualify. Like, absolutely. Some things that I have always dreamt about are manifesting. Really exciting, wonderful, positive, fantastic things. In some areas, I still feel a bit stuck, but that's because I think this new paradigm hasn't grounded itself fully. It takes time when we go through big changes for things to sort of manifest in our outer world in every respect. I'm fine with that. Like, for example, if you go through a big Pluto transit, it can take years to integrate. So we have to be patient as things play out. As I'm recording this on July 2nd, we have this really interesting transit of Mercury in early Leo opposing Pluto while trining Neptune in Pisces. And it only lasts a few days, but I've already had some experiences with this energy. And for example, yesterday I became aware of how deeply pissed off I am about something, that it's actually much deeper than I thought. I was a bit shocked by how angry I was about something. And that insight is actually really helpful, because Pluto can make us aware of things that are deep in our unconscious or subconscious. And Mercury, of course, being representative of the mind and communication, it's like we can receive messages about what is really deeply buried in our roots. This is like stuff that we have to do shadow work on. And with this trine to Neptune, we can get kind of like a spiritual perspective about what's going on there. And I'm a huge fan of shadow work. I always talk about how important that is because it's kind of our Achilles heel. And somebody else I know had something very similar happen where something was revealed that was very dark from the distant past. And it's very helpful to be able to bring this into our conscious awareness if we're willing to do the shadow work. If somebody is unconscious, they may just react and explode and say something really hurtful. They're coming from their wounding, they're being triggered. But if we're more conscious, we can use these kinds of transits and this kind of energy to gain very valuable and important insights into our own psychology, what we need to work on, what we need to heal, what we need to release. So I was a bit shocked by how this made me feel, my own personal insight. But at the same time, it was kind of like a revelation. Now I have a deeper understanding and I can work on that. And I'm just more conscious of it than I was before. And it's been something that's been going on for a long time. I just didn't know how deeply it affected me. That's great. So I hope you use these energies that way. If you're dealing with people who are a little less self-aware or a little less conscious, you do need to watch out for kind of explosive communications or situations that could be quite upsetting and even harmful, to relationships, especially if there's pent-up anger, resentment, that kind of stuff. Things could really come to the surface. Now, that transit is exact tomorrow morning, July 3rd, early in the morning, Eastern Time, and it's really only in effect for a few days. Let's say this week, so it'll pass quickly. But generally, my point is that even what we consider to be these challenging transits can be beneficial to us if we work with these energies more consciously from a higher state of awareness. The main thing that I wanted to talk about here today, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's really easy for me to do things that are really long, like my readings that I do for people, which, by the way, have been really deep lately, and I love that. Like, I've gone really deep with people, and I'm getting more and more kind of psychic or intuitive, which is fantastic. But I can go on for a long time about a natal chart or transits or whatever. What I really wanted to talk about here today was this idea that I think is quite prevalent amongst people in terms of their own consciousness, of the notion of consensus reality. There is this general belief in the collective consciousness that there is a shared consensus reality. And what I would like people to think about is that perhaps that's not true. If not, it isn't true. So where does this come from? I believe that this is a relic of the age of Pisces, where if you think about the symbol for the age of Pisces being the fish, you have a whole school of fish swimming together. You've probably seen underwater video of this, of schools of fish moving in unison all at once, right? So we went through this very, very long period, over 2,000 years, where humanity sought to form and maintain and hold a consensus reality that we could all abide by and subscribe to. And the people who moved away from that consensus reality, or outside of it, or strayed, so to speak, they were more likely to get picked off by predators. And that's what happens in the seas with schools of fish. The ones that don't follow the school are more likely to get eaten. And that's kind of like what happened in human history, where people who strayed were often ostracized, if not persecuted, for being different. And that probably includes some of you. And so there was a pressure for people to share a common paradigm. And we still have a lot of relics of that now. In fact, I would argue that a lot of the resurgence on the political right or social right is a reflection of that old paradigm, trying to maintain its relevance or to survive in the face of what are actually insurmountable odds. It's not going to happen. But they're going to try. And typically, this paradigm was reinforced in a patriarchal kind of order. We're all familiar with that. We've all seen how it works. And it was also employed often by force and hierarchically controlled. So there was a lot of pressure around that, and people had to conform. But in the age of Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, you have to think of it more from an Aquarian perspective. Aquarians are not afraid to be unique or individual. In fact, they kind of have to be. And they're willing to be ostracized if necessary, in order for them to express their own unique identity. They will not accept dogma for the sake of dogma or subscribe to other people's beliefs just because other people believe them, which I think is fantastic. My progressed sun is actually in Aquarius now, so in the 11th house. So I'm kind of tuned into that energy. And Aquarians are very intelligent and skeptical. So this new reality that we're moving into is going to look like the collective being comprised of billions of people who are all very unique and individuated. There's not going to be nearly as much pressure as there used to be for people to conform or behave in ways that were designed to meet other people's expectations. In other words, they are less willing to compromise on their true nature, their true self, their true identity. I think that is absolutely fantastic. We should start seeing people expressing that in their style, their clothing, their appearance, their tastes, their mannerisms, their proclivities. Like all the gender stereotypes, all that stuff is like kind of out the window. And the people who are trying to maintain and impose a rigid, dogmatic and constrained and hierarchical paradigm on everybody else are going to lose. It's not going to happen. You can't contain this explosive, highly charged Uranian energy, Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius, and especially with Pluto in Aquarius now. So we're going to see a lot of structures and institutions and paradigms collapse, which is exactly what we're seeing. And those institutions and organizations and structures are going to have to be recreated in a way that is much less constrained. This is going to take a long time to happen. But this is why I think we're seeing this kind of polarization and people digging in their heels and clinging to outmoded and outdated ways of expressing themselves and of operating in social organizations and circles and their communities and so forth. We're moving into a state where things are going to be changing constantly all the time. That's just the way it's going to be. So some people are finding this energy difficult because it can feel a little bit exhausting when everything is constantly changing. If you look at all the drama and chaos that's going on in the world, in many ways, especially at the beginning stages of this, it's going to resemble that for a long time. So it's advisable to allow yourself to become comfortable with not necessarily knowing everything that's going to happen all the time, to not having your expectations fixed too much, or for society and culture to be constantly in flux and even disruptive, and to some extent to allow yourself to rid yourself of your own beliefs and thought forms and habits from the past that used to serve you but that might not anymore, because you don't want to be anxious all the time and stressed out. Recently, for example, I had to kind of tune out a lot of the news and stuff because I became very energetically sensitive. I couldn't even look at or read certain things without it changing my energy in ways that I didn't like. And at the same time, I'm kind of like, yeah, we're going through a period of a tremendous amount of chaos. And that's just the way it is. It's just going to be like that. So a big part of our spiritual practice as individuals right now should be about just letting go, releasing, clearing, letting go of things that we cling to that are crystallized. We need to be more fluid and more open to change and experiences that perhaps in the past we wouldn't have even entertained. But we need to do that so that we can grow and learn and expand. In other words, we do not want to be stuck. If you're going through a Uranus transit, say to one of your personal planets, especially if it's a challenging one, things in your life can like literally appear to blow up like out of the blue. But what Uranus is trying to do is break you away from situations that were constraining you in ways that were not in your highest good. If you're in resistance to that, it can even become traumatic. So I'm just basically advising people to go with the flow. If things are changing, let them change. It's probably for your highest good. Of course, if you're doing your spiritual practice and you're more aligned with your intuition and your own personal guidance, it'll help you to understand whether what you're going through is actually what you want versus what you don't. But just very important to have that awareness. And also, if you're listening to people out there, like if you're listening to other readers or tarot readers or psychics or whatever, you need to be aware and keep in the back of your mind that everybody is channeling through their own perception. Everybody has a paradigm that they live within, whether they're aware of it or not. And so what's true for them may not be true for you. And maybe you resonate with certain people, but what you're doing is you're resonating with their paradigm. So you can hear conflicting things from different people. If you actually maintain an objective perspective on it, you'll recognize that, wait, this person said that, and this person's saying that, and they conflict with each other. But to some degree, both things can kind of be true because they're true from that person's perspective. They are relative or subjective. And at the same time, we have the very multidimensional reality going on here too. So there's some people channeling from a lower level of consciousness and other people channeling from a higher level of consciousness. And one thing might be true on one lower level and the thing on the higher level is true too, but they can be different and they can conflict. Hence, they can be paradoxical. And I've had that experience many times where from a higher perspective, some things are true, and on the lower perspective, they're not, or vice versa. So be aware that we are now part of a collective with like billions of different consciousnesses. And each consciousness is like a little universe. And then when you enter someone else's consciousness, you're entering a different reality. So don't take everything you see at face value, or at least take it with a grain of salt. And you need to be doing your spiritual practice to make sure it resonates with you. Because it may not. I don't want people to be misled. I've seen a lot of things that, like I said, are paradoxical or conflict. And logically, we say, okay, two things, these opposing things, one must be true and the other isn't. And I'm like, well, it depends on how you look at it. If we don't have a shared reality like we did in the Piscean age, then yeah, that person's perspective can be true, and so can that person's, even if they're different. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. I've met some phenomenal people recently in the readings that I do, which, by the way, I record a video on Zoom so people can review the whole reading and listen to it as often as they want, because I often cram in, like I'm cramming a lot of information in there as much as I can in that time period. So if you're interested in a reading, you know, many people are going through like extremely profound changes right now. And sometimes it's helpful to get a third-party perspective because sometimes we just can't see what's right in front of us. I know that happens with me. And I have some very, very special and dear people in my life who are able to kind of mirror things back to me that I find extremely helpful. So yeah, don't be upset if you're going through a period where things that used to work just don't anymore. You're being called to step up to a higher level, I can almost assure you, if you're remotely aware of your own consciousness. So thanks with your patience while I went through what turned out to be one of the most profound and important and significant periods of my life, and I had to do that on my own. And I'll be back as things get clearer to me and I gain a greater understanding, because that's what I want to offer people. I want to offer people wisdom and understanding, but we don't have that sometimes when we are in the middle of very far-reaching changes. For more detail, check the episode description for other episodes or articles that are related or that I mentioned. And if you're interested in a reading with me, I'll put a link to that as well. I have a 15% off special on currently. Many sincere thanks to everyone who supports me, especially my YouTube members. Thank you very much. Take care, all the best, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.